So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. It's happened. It's happened. Mason Greenwood has essentially been terminated, and I think it's not so much sent shockwaves through the fan base, or the world. It's not really sent shockwaves through the world, but more sort of quite a lot of fans in the fan base. Now, I've seen what other people have been saying regarding the matter. I've listened. I had a listen to what other people have had to say about the situation. I've got my verdicts on the whole thing from top to bottom, and there's a lot of people, on a moral basis, want to say that Greenwood, he shouldn't ever touch football professionally ever again. That's completely understandable. Um, and I would somewhat be in that same camp because there's certain things you do in life which you just you don't just stick it in there. Wow, it was a little mistake and we'll just move on from it. There's certain things that you do in life that are just completely inexcusable and should never ever really be done to any capacity. On the other side of things, we've got a lot of fans that are saying that they're not happy. A lot of people saying that they're not happy with this. A lot of people want to say, well, players, he's young players, young striker, got bags of potential. We want to see him back in the squad. We want to see him playing football again. And it's just like, well, if let's say it's a slightly more insignificant case and it's sort of stirred up a bit of trouble with the law, it's like, let's take an example like Harry Maguire getting into trouble with the police in Greece. We wouldn't sit there and say if Mason Greenwood had done something like that, that we should never touch football ever again. I wouldn't see the logical side to drawing things to that sort of conclusion. I would sit more in the camp of saying, well, look, whatever's happened is a bit of a dispute. That's also something that say happened in a different country, so it doesn't really concern us too much. It doesn't really concern us. The fact that this is a case that's close to home, it's in this country, same country of the club, same law, rules, everything, whatever you want to call it, court cases, whatever, all happens in this country, and basically everyone sort of conforms under the same umbrella. Everyone falls into the same or under the same umbrella. Mason Greenwood, essentially, as for me, just to summarize this, if I were to summarize it, I believe that this case is it's a difficult one. It's a tricky one to talk about, right? Because saying things that aren't true could lead to serious repercussions. So it's one of those where I've got to basically very, very clearly state that what I say here is just what I assume with things or what my takeaways are from this sort of situation. And based off of what we've seen evidence-wise, like the clips, the videos, the audio clips that everyone has seen that was made public from the very start, has made up a lot of people's minds based off of that, based off of what they've seen and what they've heard. A lot of people will try to use, logical sides of the argument to say, well, maybe if the phone was hacked, maybe that's something that's taken out of context. Maybe this was, it was manufactured content. Like it wasn't real, didn't happen. There's a lot of, I think at the time, a lot of people were assuming a lot of things, right? And I think a very volatile situation at the time, and it's only really come until late where everyone's like, this is blown up yet again, right? It's blown up yet again. Richard Arnold, or the club, have essentially popped out a statement, as well as the player. The statement from Richard Arnold is essentially quite a long one. Yeah, it's quite a long one. I'm probably not going to read through all of it. But essentially, it's a lot of people saying that they're not going to bother reading this. But essentially, what Richard Arnold has said here in the club statement is essentially, well, Greenwoods, we are satisfied that Greenwood hasn't committed any acts that he's being charged for. We're convinced of that, but Greenwood has made some mistakes in the past that he's going to learn from. And I'm thinking, from the get-go there, you've said, well, you believe in Greenwood's case that he is innocent. You believe in that. That's your statement from Richard. Well, that's the statement from Richard Arnold. And then in the same breath, essentially, are saying, well, he's made mistakes in his life and stuff that he's going to learn from. All this, all that, and it's like, so you've based. It's like, I think Mark Goldbridge had said this probably as accurately to how I feel about the situation from Arnold's perspective, or the club's hierarchy's perspective here. If there's not enough that's been put out there. There's not been anywhere near enough information, clarity to the situation hasn't been put out there from the club and the board level's perspective. Like, the truth. What is the truth? If the club know what the truth is of the situation, because they would have communicated with both, those who have been charging this case, but those who have been defending the case. It's essentially, it's like they've not told everyone. It's just like, we know what's happened here. We're acting on the opposite basis to what we classify as truth, but we're not going to then tell you what the truth actually is. So there's so many things where people are just like, well, okay, so what actually did happen? He's trying to wash some of his some of the mud off of his hands and say, well, there's certain things I can't say. Well, tell us everything that you can say, and point us in as much of the direction that we should be pointed in as possible. Because if we're sat here trying to decide based off of only the initial evidence releases that were popped out into public, and that we're having to base all of what we know and how we feel based off of that. I mean, there's a lot of people who say, well, Greenwood should come back into the team because he's a young player and, we want young potential in the squad. There's people thinking about this solely from a football perspective. There's people thinking about this from a monetary perspective. There's people thinking about this because they just couldn't give less of a toss about what's happened whatsoever. It's like, even if he went and blew up an entire hospital, the guy's still a young prospect for Man United. Oh, we want him back. It's like, there's some people that you couldn't question about morals or humanity, like the humane side of things, to some people, because they just won't care. They just won't care. It's like some of these same people as well, by the way. Some of the same people might actually sit there who are calling for Greenwood to come back now. If he started performing badly, you would turn around and say, "Oh, he should have been sacked off. He should have terminated his contract. It had nothing to." Like, let's be real. There's people would honestly take the situation like that. There would be people out there. Jaminho, good to see you, buddy. Good thing that Greenwood has gone. I know there's a lot of people that say that yes, Greenwood being gone is a good thing. Do you know what? The troubling thing is that there's more. Like, do you know what's crazy? It's more than half I feel more than half of people, because Manchester United have such a globalized fan base, that all the people that are in this country will have voted to say it's a good thing that Greenwood's gone, but everybody in foreign countries, in different countries from other aspects of Manchester United's fan base, would have said, well, no, this is a bad thing that he's gone. Very, very bad thing. Because, whatever you want to put that down to, I feel like because the fan base is so big, that the way that the split has been carved right down the middle in this, it's more favourable, it's more preferable to the side of people wanting Greenwood to stay and to be getting back into the team. That's that's just the way that this fan base is divided at the moment. Um, where do you think Greenwood will end up going to? I have a feeling he'll either go to Everton or the Saudi League. Probably not a club in this country, in my opinion. I don't think he will go to a club in this country. I think there's way too much. I mean, even with the United fan base, right? Because he's a player coming from another club in the Premier League. If you're joining a Premier League rival, that fan base, I think won't have it. They just won't have it. Doesn't matter about, you know, oh, young prospect this, young prospect that, whatever it may be. To them, I don't think it will matter. You'll get a lot of angry people if Greenwood starts getting, linked to a player that's had all of this stuff going on. Um, but I'd say the Saudi League quite possibly, but there's probably a few other countries, maybe dotted around Europe and in other continents, where he'll probably be welcomed in. Um, I'm not going to speak on behalf of those other leagues or clubs from these other countries. They do what they want to do. I'm not going to infringe on them. Everton, the only English club desperate enough to sign him. Um, I mean, there's probably quite a few English clubs that would be desperate to signing anybody, but I think even then, it's just there'll be too much. There'll be too much impetus from each club's respective fan base. There'd just be too much. There'd just be too much noise going on at all of these clubs saying, "Oh, we don't want Greenwood here. Don't want Greenwood here." It's a bit like the Lukaku to Juventus stuff, like just fans protesting outside the stadium on the stadium's pitch. Don't sign Lukaku. We don't want him. Um, I wouldn't say that they'd go as far as to do that, but you'd understand the sentiment that the majority of this, all of these fan bases would be saying, no, we don't want this sort of a player at our club. There's one certain bunch of scumbags from Glasgow who wear blue. It wouldn't surprise me if he went there either. Those pricks have no morals and can work about allegations of situations. Listen, I know that you hate the Glasgow Blues. I know you do. I know you do. You hate the Glasgow Blues, and that's fine. There's plenty of allegations that you'd be more than happy to engage them into, but that's Jaminho business. That is exclusive Jaminho business. Nothing more and nothing less. But you know what? I suppose the question I've got to ask that perhaps people would enlighten me to, if Greenwood, and there's two aspects to it. If there's say Greenwood is innocent, factually, like if everybody were to like know behind closed doors that Greenwood was definitely innocent, why wouldn't Greenwood drop his partner? Why wouldn't he leave her? Why wouldn't he cast her out into the cold and say, "You've ruined my career"? It's not like you're at a small League Two club or something. You're at Manchester United. If you're innocent in this case, and your partner's just done this to you, absolutely buried your career, why would you not get rid of her? Unless you're trying to make up for something. And not only that, but if anything, you've solidified your relationship with said partner even more so with the introduction of a child with this person. So it's like, if you absolutely ruined my career and my life, because this is on the internet now, it's immortalized. I'm a woman beater and a rapist to the internet, regardless of what I say. So you've killed my career, and I've got a shed load of money for me to, sort myself out and all of that. I could just drop you and I can be off doing my own thing in a different country, earning bucket loads of cash. And, it's a massive stumbling block, but it's all good from then onwards for me. Don't need to worry about no future endeavors as such. But no, instead he's um, he's basically dug the hole a little bit deeper. And I suppose if Greenwood, and this is where we can start to question the sinister side of things. If Greenwood is absolutely guilty, right, of doing these atrocious acts to this woman, this young woman, why were the family not livid about this? The family have been very quick to brush this under the carpet. Were they paid off by Greenwood? Were they? Maybe, the Greenwood side, maybe they've shared out cash amongst all the different parties or groups involved with the investigation side of things. Maybe that's occurred, and essentially what's now followed is everybody's like, okay, yeah, we're all in agreement here, let's put this case to bed. Henceforth, the case was dismissed. All the charges were dropped because people were pulling out of the investigation. The witness side of things, pulling out of the investigation. What happened there? Because it's like evidence or damning footage is put on the internet, and the fact is that a lot of people have essentially had a very closed perspective to this, a very, very closed perspective to this, where in actuality you probably say, well, look, if this is as serious as that, there'll be a lot of people being like, well, no, it's like a friend of mine, daughter of mine, whoever it is, has been wronged, big time wronged, right? So why is this case not gone towards the guilty verdict? Because by the looks of it, the fact that we engaged in the process, and do you know what's crazy is that the partner that was affected by this, it's like, I know a lot of people say, well, look, the victim this and the victim that. I'm just like, but she really hasn't helped this case at all. She really, really hasn't. It's like the statement as well, by the way, essentially, I think is going to turn a lot of hatred towards this victim, right, towards this girl that has been wronged, right, because everyone's star boy has been kicked out of the club. Just like, regardless of what wrongdoing it is, he's been kicked out of the club. And, all of his troubles ensued. But now the fan bases are going to, they're going to turn quite sour against said victim. So the victim's been wronged, but everyone's a loser in this. Everyone's a loser. Everyone's lost out. And I was going to speak about Richard Arnold in all of this because, to be quite frankly honest, the fact as to how Richard Arnold has managed this situation has been absolutely unbelievably bad. Unbelievably bad. And should be sacked as soon as possible. I'd love to fold that irrelevant club, yeah. Like an injured horse is put down Man United don't see any dollars returned, so got to put the wounded animal down. Well, they could have said screw everyone's morals and basically say, well, we'll bring him back into the squad just for the sake of selling him on. Now, there's a possibility. Now, I say it's a possibility. I mean, it would make absolutely no sense to do things this way around. And would be that he goes and he moves away. He goes to another club just to be loaned back in or something, as a way of getting him back into the squad, or United buy him back at a later date. Like, I mean, that would be just ridiculous. That would be ridiculous. And to me, that wouldn't really make too much sense as to, doing things that way around. But yeah, it's a really, really, really peculiar thing. Like, all over the place, everything's peculiar. It's like Mason Greenwood saying, like, I'm not guilty of the things I've been charged of, but there are mistakes that I will learn from. Listen, if you're innocent in response to putting out a statement to do with your case, right? A court case, you don't immediately then try and say, well, yeah, I've done nothing wrong, but I'm going to learn from my mistakes that I have made. If these mistakes are not big or significant or anything to do with this, this case that's just, that was dropped and whatnot, right? That people are judging you on, you wouldn't say, but I'm going to learn from my mistakes. You wouldn't say that. You would say, well, there's other things throughout my life I have done, such as X, Y, Z, things that are insignificant, but mistakes that I've made along the way throughout every step of my life. These are all things that I will learn from, and some mistakes will be inexcusable and whatnot. But this is part of my learning process, and to try to be the best version of me, or to try and be the best, try to be the best human I can possibly be. The fact is that we've got 2 points of view from a statement's perspective, or from the statement release, that have both said the same, essentially the same thing, but in different persons and different POVs, from the third persons to the first persons, but both of them are saying essentially, we've done nothing wrong, but we've made some mistakes. How about you give everyone some truth? How about you tell everybody what your findings on your internal case were? How about you say that Greenwood has not been found guilty from our own internal investigation, right? So this is irrespective of the case that was dropped by the courts. Your own internal investigation, that you come to your conclusions. Why do you give your conclusions to point the suspect in question as innocent, just to then terminate his contract in the same breath? That doesn't make sense to me. That's not logical. Based off of what you've said, your actions are not logical. You don't say that the guy, you're happy with the fact that this person from our investigation has not committed the offences that he's being questioned for, but we're going to get rid of him anyway. How about you go and you tell everybody with full transparency, the full rundown of everything? So go and tell everyone everything that they need to know. Be transparent. Tell everybody, what happened. Greenwood was innocent. The situation was taken out of context, but professional intermediaries have said not to speak publicly about the matters, and to let professional professional processes take their due course, because it's a situation that was taken out of your hands, but now you need to sort of we need to work together, as an internal discussion as to bringing this around. But it's just like the whole situation has been so awfully managed. the whole situation. The club's internal discussion with their statements and whatnot makes absolutely no sense what they've done. So basically, his statement saying that we've concluded the outcome of the club's investigation. We want to be direct and transparent, which you've not been. The internal disciplinary investigation between employer and employee would take place outside of the public's eye, given the nature of the allegations, the public nature of the allegations. That is, we felt it was an important that we were to follow with our own process and avoid the media interaction until we got to a definitive decision. But this is the thing, is that there's been an outside, well, I say outside to this decision. There's a group outside this decision. Obviously, you've got the fan bases or sections of the fan base that will be really unhappy about what's happened with Mason Greenwood. They will want to see him gone. There's the women's team that we've seen multiple times come out and state they're not comfortable. But we've also had the statement to say, well, the club's not going to talk to the women's team. So we don't care if you're uncomfortable or not. This doesn't concern you. That's essentially what they've said throughout a sort of train of occurrences, or chain of occurrences. But essentially, the audio footage and imagery posted online January 2022. My feelings were shocking to serve for the alleged victim. Welfare, which is perspective, have been essential to the club's approach since. While we immediately concluded that Mason Greenwood should be suspended pending investigation, we're also conscious of our duty of care towards him and the importance of making a decision based on full information. Until February this year, this was a matter of police and Crown Prosecution Service. It was only when charges were dropped that the club discussed the allegations with Greenwood, otherwise, and others involved in the case. Yeah. So, very odd. Very, very odd. Oregon Guna, DVS, good to see you, mate. How we doing? Hope you're doing well. I'm not going to be live for too much longer. I'm going to wrap this up pretty soon because I've got to get ready for my evening out. I'll get ready very, very soon. I've got to be ready by 6 at the minimum, potentially earlier. On time, doing great, fantastic to hear. That's basically a couple of bullet points here regarding in the statement here that the alleged victim requested the police to drop their investigation in 2022. Why did you request it? Why did you request it? If it's something where you were infringed, why would you request that the investigation be dropped? And not only that, but directly to the police as well. We have provided with alternative explanations for the audio recording, which was a short excerpt from a much longer recording, and for the images posted online. The alleged victim's family participated in the process and were given the opportunity to review and correct our factual findings. Or what's happened is what came out originally was true, and everyone's been paid off as potential outcoming of the case, or it was something that it was taken out of context by someone who got a hold of the material and then perhaps captioned it, and an audio recording wasn't real, and that was manufactured as well. So there's two ways in which, factually this could have gone. But in essence, to what the statements have tried to conclude with here is saying, well, Greenwood hasn't done anything wrong, but we're essentially saying, but he's made some mistakes that he's going to learn from. It's like, oh my God, you don't just come out and say that. You don't just come out and say that, because even if it's that Greenwood is legitimately guilty, your statement has drawn a lot of attention onto the victim. And because the fan base is split more majority in favour of Greenwood coming back to the club and starting to play again, you can understand just how big the backlash was going to be with that. So did Greenwood not even touch her? The initial release of the information, such as the audio clip, the pictures, all of that sort of stuff, that has been circulating online, with what basically had been going around. Essentially, you had painted Greenwood in this negative picture, but there's a lot of questions that I've got to ask regarding just the conclusion of this case, but also the logics behind it, like the thinking behind some of the decisions that have been made. Certain things that I really just don't understand. I'm behind with the story. I think there's a lot of people outside of the United fan base that probably either don't really care so much about this sort of stuff, but United fans, a lot of them have been very, very eager to see this get concluded quickly. And yeah, it's quite messed up. I mean, it's like a point I made earlier. If Greenwood was innocent, for a guy that's just had a partner try to ruin his life, if that was all manufactured, why doesn't he drop her? For some reason, he's sticking with a partner that if, let's say, hypothetically, the case was manufactured by the woman in question, that the victim basically framed Greenwood for doing an act of crime that he's not committed. The fact is that Greenwood's stuck with his partner and is now potentially going to open a potential opportunity that she could end up doing something similar again. Doesn't really, like, logically, it doesn't really bode too well. Like, it's not something that I can directly explain as to the thinking behind it. Footballers live in a different world than us. Crazy. Yeah, it is. It is absolutely crazy. There's a lot. There's so much. There is really, really so much that could be material wise. There's so much material in this where we're left just to solely speculate with things. It's like, even with the fact that Greenwood's been released, it's like the club have acted on a judgment that doesn't make sense, or the judgment makes sense, but the actions regarding it, the actions following it, the actions in reaction to said incident doesn't add up. If he's innocent by your standards, he wouldn't be getting his contract terminated, because you would be transparent and you'd be telling everybody, look, from our own investigation, we found that he's not guilty, he's not done this, he's not done that. So we want to make people feel more easy about the situation. Of course, it's something where stuff has been put online, material's been put online, everyone's made their own mind up. Everyone's seen it, they've heard it, they're like, oh, well, I only need to see that and hear that, and that's it, my mind's made up. What's crazy is that the club have decided, well, actually, we're not going to tell anybody what the truth is. We're going to say, well, we believe in what the truth is and we're going to act upon it. Oh, plot twist, we're actually going to terminate his contract despite me deciding what I'm going to do based off of my thoughts about this, based off of what my findings are, based off of what... It's like, it doesn't make sense, does it? It really, really doesn't make sense. So for me, Richard Arnold has acted on a very scared basis, very, very scared basis. And the fact is that we've got a CEO that is very, very spineless and very dangerous, very, very dangerous, because I think we can sort of grasp a little bit of insecurity. Like, he doesn't back his decision. He doesn't believe in his decisions, or what, he's not got a backbone to make a tough choice and to stick by it, right? It's like, because we saw that he was going to be integrated, right? And the women's team were not being spoken to about it, despite their public concerns. There are people saying at the club, "Oh, we'll go on strike if he comes back." It's like, that was what the word on the street was. That was what the word on the street was. Why have you turned around, essentially come out with a verdict that supports the previous course of action, but now have partaken in taking the opposite? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. I'm very, very, very confused as to what has gone on with the decisions in back of house, which is why I believe that they should be transparent, actually transparent, rather than trying to keep everyone uh, sort of latched on with more questions than answers. Like, to me, that would just be much better for the club. But now, essentially, we're going to have extended turmoil and a lot of unhappy fans. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Why not just drop him and move on? Well, it's interesting that that the club or Richard Arnold just didn't decide to actually do a logical thing and actually just explain what's going on and say, well, look, Greenwood's not committed any of these offences. From our investigation, we've communicated with the defendants' parties in this case. They've explained the situation. The part that the victim has explained the situation. And the evidence pieces or their statements are as follows. These are quoted statements that they've given us discretion or the rights to release these statements to you. It would make a lot more sense to deliver that sort of transparency, as opposed to saying, well, he's not done anything wrong from our accordance, from what we've seen, from what our findings are on this case matter. But we're still going to go the opposite way to what we just said. Like, it's like the things aren't really adding up here. Really, really are not adding up. So yeah, there's basically, long story short, the handling of this case, right, is that, I mean, I've got some speculations to this case that I think perhaps it's one of those things that I shouldn't really be um, discussing about, because otherwise that could probably land me in some trouble. So I probably won't um, indulge in said actions. But I think just on the standpoint, I mean, the moral standpoints is based off of what I've seen and what I've heard. It's like I wasn't comfortable with Greenwood coming back, so it's just like, based off of that, the way I feel is that I wouldn't be comfortable with Greenwood, playing for Manchester United again. Now, he can go and play for another club. That's absolutely fine. He can go do what he wants, but it's just at my club, I'm not comfortable with seeing this ridiculous case unfold. Essentially, make a complete mockery of, I think, the legitimacy of what Manchester United is meant to be. It is just a complete and utter mess from top to bottom, and I believe that the board, regardless of if this was right or wrong, regardless, the board should be sacked. I mean, among the million other things that they've done. So sad. The situation is sad. It should never have come to this. It should never be so poorly handled. It should have been professional, straightforward, and then at the conclusive stage, everyone should be transparent about it. We've not got that. Actually, I should really give him a try back. That's your perspective, Mohammed, of absolutely, like, respect to the way that you want to feel about situations, but I can't go along that same. I can't go along that same path. Can't go along that same route for me. Because I've got more of a moral sense, that I feel like if someone's been wronged based off of material that's that has been for public access, that's basically what we are left to pin our judgments on, whether you want to say that's factual evidence or not. That's where you can make your decisions. But for me, based off of what I've seen, I've made my decision based off of what I've seen or heard. And that for me is what's conclusive to me, and that's basically what's final to me. It's a massive distraction for the club. It is. It is. It is a massive distraction for the club because there's a lot. It's like life goes on. It does, and there's so many more people outside of this case that have got their lives to go on and live as well. And it's like if they're in an establishment that is pinned back by skepticism, criticism, ongoing drama, it doesn't do anybody any favors. It's like our season, if it were to come out, if in hindsight it were to come out that the season was hampered because of the Mason Greenwood situation, that the players couldn't feel completely focused, or the manager's judgment on what he wants to do moving forward has been hampered. It's it is a difficult thing. It is a really, really difficult thing. It's true that they would have given him a second chance. Well, that's what they were going to do. That's what they were going to do. And it's just like, regardless of whether I think it's right or wrong, I can say that I don't believe Greenwood should play for Manchester United again. That's my viewpoint. But the course of action by those that actually are in charge of making decisions had this, right? This was the plan. And they were saying, well, we're not going to speak to other parties or groups outside of this investigation process for us. But now what's happened is based off of this statement, the feeling is the same. The feeling is the same. They say, well, we're convinced that Greenwood hasn't done anything wrong. But at the same time, we've got our investigation that's concluded. We feel about things a certain way. We've got a lot of people that have said other things, that have said otherwise, and we're essentially now going to the actions that we are forced to take, or I say forced, or the actions that we are taking are basically just completely the opposite to what we said the plan was going to be. So that's where we're at right now. That's where we're at, is a board or a CEO that has a decision to make and essentially goes one way, but then is swayed very, very easily, despite following by what he feels, and then swaying back the other way to go, well, I feel about this a certain way, but I'm going to act against what I think and what I feel. Doesn't really bode well for me. 10 watching, smash the likes up. Absolutely. Get them likes smashed up, people. I'm going to be wrapping things up because I've got to go get ready for my evening. This was always going to somewhat be a short one, but I just felt like this needed to somewhat be addressed a little bit on this channel. I think it's one of those things that nobody's really comfortable with talking about it. No one's really comfortable because it can be quite a touchy thing. But the bigger picture from a Man United perspective is that life is going to go on. This club has still got to, progress. This club has still got a lot of things that it's got to take care of in the near future. From us as supporters, we've got to essentially turn our focus back to that, because now action has been taken on a conclusive basis, and that we've basically we've just got to move on now. And I think that's where that's the direction we've got to turn in. And there it is. That's pretty much it. So big ups to everybody that has tuned in. Thank you very, very much for watching. Cheers, Fuzz. Thank you, Oregon Gooner, for tuning in. Big ups to you. Really appreciate your support. Big ups to everybody else that has dropped in as well to say hello. Seen a comment here that's not come up on my StreamYards for some reason. You would have left him to train at the club and plays other leagues. Well, I believe that, I'm not going to sit here and say that Greenwood is not allowed to, kick a football ever again. Like, I can't give that verdict. I can't give that sort of decision. He can go and play football. It's just, I don't believe he should be playing at this club, but I don't believe he should be. Well, he probably wouldn't be allowed, or I don't think fan bases from other clubs in this country would be happy enough to allow for their clubs to sign him. So I would probably say that he wouldn't go to another Premier League club or another club in this country. I'd probably say he's much more likely to end up going abroad to revive his career as such. But I think what we need to do is focus on bigger problems now. And there's a lot of big problems at this club, such as this board not signing players for Erik ten Hag, and not selling players for Erik ten Hag, and us still continuing with abysmal away forms in bigger games. And that's a big talking point for us as United supporters and as a fan base for us to cover. And I think that's where we need to collectively turn our focus to now, because that's now that's a big problem that could string down or trickle down into causing many more problems across a wider margin. So that's where I believe we need to focus on now. Yeah, I'll wrap things up here now. Thank you very much. Big ups to everybody who has tuned in. Thank you very much for those that have liked the stream. Big ups to everybody. Won't be streaming again until late night tomorrow, as I've got quite a long day ahead of me tomorrow. So I've got plenty of things to take care of. So you won't see me until late night, about 9-ish, I reckon, about 9. On Tuesday night, so tomorrow night, 9 o'clock, thereabouts. Expect me then, and we'll probably have another sort of chilled chat session there. So big ups to everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one. Ciao for now.